think of cortisol, think of adrenaline. We're meant to have these responses. So we have really fast reflexes so we can survive an attack and we can have superhuman strength. Someone can lift a car to save a baby, etc. That's meant to be in your system for a very, very short period for survival. Now, if you have that in your system for a long period, you are going to get very, very unwell. And that is the same thing with core beliefs that come from trauma and untruths. They might be able to serve you in the short term. They might give you that fire. They might give you that drive. But it's only going to get you to a certain point, and then you are going to go sideways. And that's how you know, Joe, okay, I need to change. I call it changing your source of fuel. So if I've been operating on gas and I need to go on petrol, if I need to go petrol, whatever it might
Diesel.
be.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, welcome everyone to the Be Thyself podcast by Joanne Lolash. Today is episode 16. Wow, 16. And we have Chantel here again. Welcome, Chantel.
Thanks for having me again.
What a privilege, honestly. I'm very, very lucky to have you on my podcast. Chantel, we mentioned, was the addiction specialist and trauma specialist. She is the lead trainer of Brainspotting in the African region. She's
the Middle East and North Africa.
Middle East and North Africa. She trains mental health clinicians, and Brainspotting is the most up-to-date neuroscience when it comes to healing trauma. Today we're going to deep dive into that. All right. So Chantel, obviously, she's the pro, she's the expert. 20 years she trains people in this field. We know it's the latest innovation in neuroscience. Tell us a little bit more about Brainspotting, Chantel.
I haven't been training people for 20 years in this field. I've been working in this field for 20 years.
Sorry, I meant to say you've been working for 20 years, but you train
mental health
clinicians. Yeah. Yes. Tell us a little bit more, Chantel. I want to know about Brainspotting, please.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Brainspotting is one of the leading modalities when it comes to healing trauma, but not just trauma, when it comes to neuroplasticity in general. So it does access the brain and it taps into the brain's innate ability to heal itself. So the technical word here is homeostasis. So our brain does know how to get this system into homeostasis, which is perfect balance, how it's supposed to be operating. And it just needs to have the right conditions to do so. Brainspotting provides the conditions for the brain to do its job, which is to heal the person and bring them to their highest potentiality, which is really to be thy true self.
Be thyself.
Be thyself.
Love
your
it.
podcast.
Love it. So it's connected.
And what more would you like to know?
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about, I want to know some examples. So obviously you just mentioned that Brainspotting is creating the space for people to be their best self. How is it done? Can you tell us the neuroscience? And then give us examples of people who have done Brainspotting, so what trauma they were undergoing and what the results were.
Sure. So first I'll tell you how I came across it and then I'll go into that as well.
Yes, please.
So in the previous podcast that we did, we spoke about my background in addiction and then how it went into trauma because with an addictive behavior, it's usually a coping mechanism typically for trauma.
Yeah.
And so I developed a program that was 80 modules with clients where I use the analogy from Shrek where he goes, ogres are like onions, they have layers. And so are humans.
Yeah.
And usually the core is a traumatic experience or a trauma capsule. And then the external layer of the onion on the outside is the addictive behavior. But then we go the layer underneath, it's our thought processes, how we're thinking. The layer underneath that, it's our emotional regulation, how we're processing our emotions. And then right in the core is our trauma capsules or our core beliefs that are not helping us and have not been processed.
So they create all of that.
Yeah, they emanate outwards to the addictive behaviors, which are soothing mechanisms. So the way that I was working with addiction would be outside in, which is the right way to go. You do not go straight to the trauma, which is ceasing the behavior and then working on thought processes, emotional regulation, and then last thing is touching traumatic material, because by the time you touch what's really painful, you've already built Superman or Superwoman. The person has so many emotional regulation skills. They've already stopped the behavior. They're already managing how they think. So they are ready and well prepared to touch anything that might be a very big feeling. It's easy for them.
Yeah.
But this takes a lot of time, Joe. It takes a lot of time. That's why there were 80 modules. And I remember I was presenting at an addictions conference up on the Gold Coast, and a peer of mine who would manage the services of a rehab up on the Sunshine Coast. Beautiful service over there, beautiful team. He was well aware of how my program works because we would collaborate a lot. So they would send clients from their rehab after they finished treatment to do continued care, or I might be doing some intervention services for them for people that needed to get into treatment. And he said to me, Shanti, have you heard of Brainspotting? Because he knew how I operated. And I was like, no, I've never heard of it. What is this? And he explained it to me. And the way that he explained it to me is you didn't need to do so much front loading and preparation of this to get to the center of the onion. You could go directly to the center of the onion, which is the traumatic material, without the risk of what we call re-traumatization. Because it's very dangerous to go directly to traumatic material if you haven't prepared an individual with the skills and the resources to process trauma. It can be fatal. So it's why people should not play with trauma if they're not trained. This modality, the way he explained it to me, is you can go there very quickly without all this front loading, very safely and with no risk of re-traumatization. So I said, what is this magic modality you're talking to me about?
Please tell me.
I need to find out more.
Yeah.
And then began the rabbit hole journey of exploring brain spotting and how it works and working with my clients. And I saw what was happening with my clients was incredible. So things that would take 6 months to get to with proper preparation, we could get to within 3 sessions.
Wow.
Or even the first session if we really needed to. So it was quite incredible because it does a thing where it won't make sense to the viewers until they watch the podcast that we did before this. So you have to go watch the previous podcast.
Episode 15.
Yes. It will do certain things to increase the person's window of tolerance in such a magnified way that anything that was really big can come into that window and start to process that they weren't aware of. And it can do that by remembering what a trauma is, but it can also be not even knowing what a trauma is and just focusing on the symptom. I don't like leaving my house. I don't want to leave the house. Person may not know why they don't want to leave the house, but just on that discomfort of not wanting to leave the house, it's activating the beginning of that neural network. It's a door to that neural network. We find the correct eye position. We start to process, and whatever is causing it, even though they don't even know, they don't need to know what it is, will start to process in the background and shrink. I tell you many stories.
Yeah, like I want success stories because I know you've actually trained some high performers, and I'd love to know what a life in a high performer is, what kind of behavior, what is they're trying to achieve and what the results are, so what they're coming from, because we did touch on addiction and trauma being interconnected, and we explained it like an onion. So there's the actual wound, and then there's layers and layers of that wound that creates the behavior, right? And that could be the addiction or whatever the addiction might be. So can you give us something or an example of a high performer having an addiction to something and what the root cause was? So what was the driver for that person in behaving that way? You don't have to say names, but just give us examples.
When you look at high performers, they typically have very addictive nature. So this is going a bit beyond the brain spotting stuff. This is more going into an addiction and addictive nature, and then brain spotting, how it can then help. But the point of origin, if a person has an addictive nature where they're more dopamine driven, and then they're going to be more high performing typically because they're more dopamine driven. But then if traumas come into play, the traumas or epigenetic trauma, as we mentioned last time as well,
drive it.
That can then lead it to addiction. So it's no longer going towards performance, it's now going towards self-sabotage and things that can really harm them. So this is where you can see people that are incredibly successful on the outside, and they may have some very harmful behaviors that you're not aware of, but it's their handbrake. They could actually be a hell of a lot more successful, even though they've hit what appears to be the pinnacle. It's not yet the pinnacle. So there is a handbrake there.
So what was the conscious belief that someone might have, whether that came from epigenetics, whether that came from a life wind trauma, or whether that just came from an experience they had? So
it could be a subconscious belief of I'm not enough, for example.
So I need to be enough.
Yes, I need to be enough. But that belief, it can drive someone in the short term, But there's a saying, the donkey that gets you to the gate won't get you through the gate. So it will get you to a certain point, but it's not coming from truth, and your system knows it's not coming from truth. So that's when it will only get you so far, and you will start going sideways with different behaviors.
So would you say you keep hitting brick walls and having same emotions and responses?
Yes, and the reason you're hitting brick walls and you're having the same responses and same emotions is the subconscious is trying to prove that core belief to be true. So it's like, oh, look, I'm going to get dropped by this club. Or look, I'm going to lose this contract or etc., whatever it might be. I'm not good enough. It's because I'm not enough, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so it feeds the story that you originally had, which is the original wound.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So you're sabotaging yourself subconsciously because that core belief is trying to actually play out.
So if that belief that you have gets fed with you didn't win that contract, you didn't do this thing, I'm not enough, that person then goes into an addiction. They go into the addiction mode.
Well, the addiction could be causing that. So, for example, they could be binging the night before and they were really late to a very important meeting. And that's why they didn't get their contract. So if you're looking at the mechanisms of addiction, they're quite complex. They're not simplistic. When I hear things are going, addiction is because of disconnection, I just want to bash my head against a wall because it's so simplistic and it's much more complex than that. So if you look at addiction and the mechanisms in the brain, there's a lot to it, and a large part of it is a subconscious belief that's trying to prove itself to be true, and it's beyond the person's awareness. So if they have a belief subconsciously, I'm not enough, and say, Joe, they're very successful and everything on the outside says they are enough. Yeah. Consciously, they're happy, but subconsciously, they're not. And they're not aware of it. The subconscious goes, no, Shanti, you're not enough. How dare you have everything you want?
So they sabotage it.
So we sabotage. So then my brain will look for a neural network I already have where I have felt not enough, and it will look at the first neuron in that sequence. And it might be that I'm thinking everybody is out to get me, and so I'm hyper paranoid, and I start withdrawing, and then I don't talk to anybody, and then all of a sudden I lose all these opportunities, or I stop going to meetings I'm supposed to, and then I'm thinking, oh no, I was just off that month or whatever it might have been, but subconsciously that core belief has created that. Or instead of withdrawing, it could be like, oh, you know what? Let's go party with the boys, or let's go on a weekend trip with the girls, or whatever it might be. Where I ended up engaging in these behaviors. And I might think it's an innocent thought, but it's coming from a sequence where in the end I felt I wasn't enough, or I felt regret, or I felt shame, or I felt guilt. Because the brain knows subcortically that this is where it starts and this is where it will lead me to, and it wants me to feel this.
Yeah, that feeling. It's that dopamine hit, that happy endorphin.
In the middle, but the end is not the dopamine hit. The end is the crash.
The crash, yeah.
It's the horrible feeling afterwards. And it confuses everyone. They go, why on earth would I be addicted to feeling horrible? Because this is an unprocessed emotion you would have felt somewhere in your life, or epigenetically. It's unprocessed, and it's like a balloon you hold under water. It will keep wanting to resurface.
So you say, oh, this is this absolute truth, but as humans and we're functioning, we all have beliefs.
So nothing's absolute truth. This is what we know for now, but I might be completely wrong. I am not God. This is what we know to know, and if new information and data surfaces,
then we'll look at that. Yes. Okay, at this moment in time, this is
what we know.
This is what we know. Yeah. And I would say everyone getting up every single day has beliefs that are driving them. That's what's holding them up. If you had no beliefs, you would drop dead, right? You would actually not function in human society. These beliefs can be beliefs that drive you, and the beliefs that don't drive you. They could probably leave you in bed all day. It just depends on what you believe.
They can be healthy or unhealthy.
That's it. Now, at what point, because I know some of my beliefs and my drivers, and I'm working on them, and I'm trying not to hit brick walls. I haven't hit brick walls, but I'm trying not for them to be negative beliefs that get me to hit brick walls. At what point do you decipher what is trauma? Because I know trauma can drive success, which is not a bad thing. Trauma can drive success, but at what point do you decide that I'm going to be successful but without that driver? Because sometimes you need that fire, that sometimes the trauma is the fire that gets you things going. Yeah. Is that true or not true?
But that's the saying, the donkey that gets you to the gate won't get you through the gate. So your trauma is driving you, and it may bring really beautiful things to a point because it's not coming from truth. It's coming from a false belief. It's coming from unmetabolized information that needs to be metabolized.
Okay.
So that's why good things can come from it, but only to a certain point. Then you're going to start getting very sick. So for example, think of cortisol, think of adrenaline. We're meant to have these responses. So we have really fast reflexes so we can survive an attack, and we can have superhuman strength. Someone can lift a car to save a baby, etc. That's meant to be in your system for a very, very short period for survival. Now, if you have that in your system for a long period, you are going to get very, very unwell. And that is the same thing with core beliefs that come from trauma and untruths. They might be able to serve you in the short term. They might give you that fire. They might give you that drive, but it's only going to get you to a certain point, and then you are going to go sideways. And that's how you know, Joe, okay, I need to change. I call it changing your source of fuel. So if I've been operating on gas and I need to go on petrol, if I need to go petrol, whatever it might
Diesel.
be.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, and identifying that will give you a different solution
It's like
or result.
harming me now.
Yeah, I
Saying, hold on, things are going sideways. This isn't helping me. I now need to heal this. And there's a really common fear with high performers that, hold on, if I heal my trauma, am I going to lose my fire? It's like creatives going, I need to be tortured to be creative. I'm going to sing my best songs or paint my best art when I'm heartbroken and tortured. And it's going,
Yeah, it drives you.
This
That
much.
much.
Yeah.
But it's initial driver.
It's an initial driver, but without the trauma,
Yeah.
you look at what's inside that person, and there's a lot more. It's a fallacy, but we can really believe it. There's a quote by Marianne Williamson, and it's in Coach Carter, where it's about, and it's often attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it comes from Marianne Williamson. It's really long, but the shortened version is, it's not that our shortcomings or weaknesses frighten us. It's basically, I'm really paraphrasing it. All your listeners, go look it up. So I get the specific actual quote because it's beautiful, but it's our light that frightens us most. So it's really our greatness that frightens us. We're not afraid of our weaknesses or what I can't achieve. Subconsciously, we're actually afraid of how great we are. And in Australia, we really do have this, particularly with tall poppy syndrome that we have here. How dare I be great in something? How dare I stand out? How dare I embrace what my natural talents and skills are? People are going to think, or in Arabic, "She fi hala haydi." She's like, who does she think she is? Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. It's like, cut yourself down, yourself down. And what I notice with high performers is subconsciously they can be a fear of, if I really step into my true power, I'm going to be so separate from everybody around me.
I had that fear. Yeah. I worked on that. I actually identified that, but I changed it. So it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I use it as a positive thing. So if I was, imagine how much greatness I could achieve. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yes. So I changed the narrative and the thought based on that. But you've hit the nail on the head, because that was one thing that came up. I had a fear. I had a fear of being great, having success. You know, there were so many beliefs around it.
Yes. And then the flow and effect of you stepping into that, Joe, is like Mother Teresa when she goes, you throw a pebble into a lake and all the ripples, you won't even know the ripples, which also goes to Marianne Williamson's, the end of that quote, when you embrace stepping into that, I really wish I could remember the exact quote, but you unconsciously give permission for others to do the same. So you're inspiring others to also have courage and step into themselves, actually be themselves. I've done a little tangent there.
I love that. I do think, though, traumas, you know, this is all science related, but then there's God, and God created us, right? And God put us in these scenarios that created the original trauma. That was of his hand.
He did not create the trauma.
Sorry, when I say he didn't create that.
He allowed life to unfold.
Well, that's it. So, okay, so that happened to you, that happened to me.
Yeah.
This is all part of your life's journey.
Yeah.
So whether or not it's the thing that keeps driving you into brick walls, or might be the fire under your belly that gets you to the places that you need to, he made them happen. Whether that happened with, you know, Andrew or Jessica or Stephanie, the scenario still happened to me or you to create certain things to unfold in your life.
He allowed those things to happen. He didn't make them happen, but he turned something beautiful out of that pain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the alchemy of that.
Yes.
Alchemization.
Yeah, and it's, so for example, a child might be orphaned and have both parents pass away early in life and go from home to home to home. God didn't make that happen. He may have allowed that to happen because we're not Lego people that he controls. We have free will.
Yeah.
And imagine there was a drunk driver that killed those parents. So God didn't force that person to drink and get behind the wheel.
Yeah.
But he allowed it to unfold because we're not Lego people. And then you look at the trauma that young child goes through. That trauma can be turned into something beautiful if it's healed. That person now has a depth of understanding of loss and grief that they'll be able to connect with others, that people who haven't gone through that will never be able to connect with others. And maybe that person ends up creating an orphanage, for children in a country where they need it, or ends up doing really beautiful things in a philanthropic manner. That sensitivity drove them to do that, but it was a healing of that trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Gabor Mate's one to talk about that. He's a trauma specialist.
Yeah.
He actually experienced, what was that war? I keep forgetting
the Holocaust.
The Holocaust,
yeah.
So that Holocaust experience, which I know God didn't make happen, but he had the experience with that, drove him to make all the decisions that he had in his life. All right. And he even says, he laughs about it now, and he says, I throw myself. He goes, if you really, really, really want to feel like you're wanted or needed, you should throw yourself in work, because work's going to keep fulfilling, those beliefs that you already had. And that all came from the Holocaust. That was the original place that he had. So that drove him there.
Gabor is an amazing human, and I love that you brought him up. And he is such a perfect example of healed trauma. Because when you look at healed trauma, look at the amount of people that he is helping in healing. And even if you look at in the past podcast when I spoke about epigenetic trauma, mentioning the Holocaust,
yes,
and how it was passed on for 5 generations, and what it indicated was unhealed trauma. It hadn't actually been healed, and that's why it was being passed on. Whereas when you look at Gabor, that's healed trauma.
But no, that's not fully healed. He lived some of the trauma though. He actually
yes,
did.
of course. But now, where is that now?
Of course, yes.
He talks about his unhealed traumas.
Yes, he talks about it. He actually openly says it.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
But now you look at, for example, the genocide in Gaza. That is coming from unhealed trauma. That is where the victims become the perpetuators.
Yeah.
When you look at Gabor, he has deep compassion for people of Gaza. And he calls it for what it is. He goes, this is a genocide, because he is coming from a healed place.
Yeah.
He's not in a trauma wound.
Yes, I understand.
Whereas many who did not heal that trauma wound would be like, no, you're the bad people and we've got to protect ourselves. And they'll really, really believe it because they're still in that trauma. He's like, no, we're human and we need to love each other and not kill each other. That's what healing our traumas looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of similar to people who forgive. That's them. That's the Holy Spirit allowing them to heal the trauma in that moment in time where something big happens. You haven't even had time to process it, but the Holy Spirit comes through to you and actually heals you in that moment in time.
Yeah. And it's a supernatural act. It can be beyond us. Yeah.
Beyond us, and some people carry stuff for many years. I know I can get stuck in stuff and I have to learn to clear it. But that's an experience of someone healing it through modalities. Someone is having the Holy Spirit come through them and actually forgive them at the time that it happened.
I love that you mentioned that, because we talk about modalities for healing that are science-based, etc. And I talk about having an increased window of tolerance so information can come in. But before I knew about Brainspotting, adoration was my healer.
Holy Spirit.
Confession was my healer.
That's faster than...
But if you look at adoration, to explain, I guess, to your audience who are aware of adoration in the Catholic faith, the Eucharist, that piece of bread we believe is God, become material, into material form. And in adoration, the Eucharist is in this giant gold star thing, and we just sit before God, made physical. And if I'm talking about the limbic system that we spoke about in the previous podcast, of how our brainwaves will attune. So if you have a calm therapist, for example, and the calmness of their brainwaves gives you an enlarged window of tolerance, so all the traumatic material can come in and start to process that you don't even know you have will come in and start to process. That's why statistically the modality is actually not important. It's the rapport. 75% of your outcomes come from the rapport with the person you're working with. Because if they have a calm nervous system, you will have that expanded window of tolerance and it will heal. I'll get to the point in a sec.
That's all right.
In adoration, I used to go when I lived here every Thursday at Our Lady of Lebanon, and it would be so beautiful, all the candles and the hymns. And I remember that when I first started going, I was in like my early 20s with my best friend Jessie. We would go there, and I remember the first 3 months, I would just cry. I wouldn't even know I was crying. But every single Thursday, just crying. It was basically brain spotting because the presence of God was expanding my window of tolerance. And all this unprocessed information in my system that I wasn't even aware of was entering my window and starting to process, and it was releasing through tears. I didn't know I was crying. And then post those 3 months, every time I'd go to adoration, I would just be in euphoria. It's like you really don't need drugs to hit euphoria. Yeah. You really do just need Jesus.
Some people need right? Yeah.
But pure euphoria experiences, just being there because of the brainwaves of God coming into our limbic system.
I believe that. But then we'll go back to human biology and science. And again, neurodivergent or even some people, their pathways, their makeup, their build or their neurotransmitter function is quite low. So it doesn't allow them to process things the way other people do. So there's that human biology side, which we talked about. Tyrosine, tryptophan, all precursors for your dopamine and serotonin hits. And that's what we really need to happen in the body for us to process it. You know, I watched a little episode. It was a lady. She was raped when she was younger, and I talked about this in the previous episode. She was raped when she was younger, and she was so traumatized by this. So like for about 7-8 years after the trauma came up, about 16, she was highly medicated. She was using the system. And you'd see her, she was overweight. She was eating all these cakes and, icings on sugars, and I'd see her and she was just like obese. She'd gotten obese from all the medication. She did a fecal transplant, which her partner had research at the time to sort of increase neurotransmitters, and her whole life changed. Her trauma went down. Her weight went down. It was all about her neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, all that in her body, which happened through fecal, right? And that's the human biology aspect, Shanti, that I think that is really untapped as well. There's all aspects, and this whole podcast is about being thyself, and it's about human potential. So we look at health holistically, and we look at all different facets. Another thing about epigenetic trauma, which you mentioned before, which is the Holocaust, in South Africa, I think, is it South Africa or Africa? Yes, South Africa. The crime there is awful. Like you would get robbed, killed, stabbed, raped if you just were walking down your street, if you in your home. Now, I was trying to understand why the crime rate was so high. Like, what was it? And it was actually epigenetical trauma, because the Africans were slaves back in the day, like a very, very, very long time ago. They were actually enslaved. And now they gained their rights and they gained their freedom. But what they're doing, they've come in with a trauma-based aspect, and they're actually, it's like they're making up for the slavery that happened years ago of their ancestors, and they're just killing people, raping them, stealing. Like, it's very unsafe. It's a very high crime area. It's all epigenetics as well. Anyways, so that goes.
Trauma begets trauma.
Yeah, trauma, hurt people, babes. Thank you for that. That was a big breakdown in brain spotting. If we had time, if you were to just talk a little bit, and we can deep dive into addiction. I know you've covered it briefly, but maybe about 5 minutes on what addiction is, and do you use brain spotting for addiction?
Yes, we do use brain spotting for addiction. So it depends on what door you want to enter through in a person's neural network. It could be going to the original traumas or sensations that the person's trying to avoid and self-soothe from, which could be whatever the core beliefs are, could be attachment wounds, etc. And then just providing the capacity through that technique for that material to start to process. It could also be, there's a technique developed by Dr. Robbie Abels, where it's incorporating brain spotting with narrative therapy that does look at different regions of the brain where you'll have the craving for the addictive behavior, and then building a bridge to the region of the brain that has the consequence for the behavior. So when a person has a craving, they immediately remember the consequence. and then strengthening the neural network of freedom. She will articulate it much more brilliantly than I probably just butchered that explanation. She's incredible. So there are many ways to work with addiction, with Brainspotting, that are really effective, because the person, when you're dealing with addiction, you're typically dealing with really high levels of trauma that's really dysregulating, and they can go to these regions really gently without even having to think or talk really about anything, or even articulate. It can be done in silence, and it's very, very effective and beautiful and gentle for addictions.
Love it. And do you, obviously you work on the trauma which creates the behavior. Is that how the Brainspotting works?
You can enter through any doorway. So a neural network is a network. So you can go through the causation or you can go through the symptom. So it doesn't matter where you start.
You can still get to it.
It's getting in there. Yeah. Okay. So it's like going to the gym and choosing what muscle am I going to work today. Your entire body, your metabolism is going to start burning. So that may not be the best analogy, but it doesn't matter what part of the neural network you access. It's part of the same network for that issue. Could be causation, could be symptom.
Amazing. I love it. Can you just give us one example and then we'll wrap it up?
I'm going to give you an example on performance, actually. So I'm going to make it a little bit different. This is a really cool story. So I had a client come in, and funnily enough, it was an addiction recovery client. And they wanted to try Brainspotting on, actually they were in the addiction recovery space, but they were in recovery at the time, and they just wanted to try Brainspotting for a performance issue. So they were playing a particular sport, and they were having a yip, and a yip is a choke. So it's like, imagine a basketball player and they have a really important shot to make in a game and they miss it. That causes a trauma capsule. It causes a shock in their system. So now every single time they have an important shot, their body will have a little micro freeze right before they throw the ball and they miss the shot. Or we would call it a choke. But it's a yip. It's micro freezes that just stuffs up a really important movement. And so a particular sport this person was playing, we ended up identifying 2 eye positions. One was for when he would feel the yip or the choke come on, and the other eye position was when he would feel that he would be in a flow state, like total free flow, and everything would be incredible. And we processed it was about an hour session. And at the end of it, he goes to the place he does this sport. He videos himself and he completed that movement perfectly and sent me the video. But what came up when he was processing were memories of something totally different, a different career he had when he was training for a completely different non-sport related career, and just preparing the skill set he needed for that career when he was studying, etc., and the difficulties he was having. Those memories were coming up organically while he was Brainspotting. So there must have been traumatic material from his studies that were not related when it had to do with performance, when something's really important to you, but it was showing up in his sporting game. And so when he was identifying, I want to fix this movement in sport, he started to clear what was really causing it, which in a million years we never would have been able to guess that cognitively. But his system did it on its own because it knows what to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those things are like little residues. It's just sort of just been there. They've been around.
And you're not even aware of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's just the human experience that we all have stuff. Even if it's stuff that didn't really happen, it's stuff that you created the perspective or emotion to it. And so you created this thing, you created this narrative keeps happening. So it's so good to do the work, because when you're doing the work, as you're evolving, those beliefs no longer exist in your world and you can sort of clear them. And so you can level up to the place that you want to. But I do believe traumas are also good. They give you that little bit of fire in your belly for a little while until you do the work and heal from that. And then you evolve into your true self.
Yeah, of course. Otherwise, it's a handbrake.
That's right. Wow, I love that analogy, handbrake. Have you ever heard of we are triune beings? That was my previous podcast, triune beings.
Is that having the Trinity within us?
Yeah, so we're
beautiful.
Mind, body, spirit, so triune beings.
Okay.
And we are. So there's all these different aspects. There's human biology. I do believe your emotions can drive your human biology, and I think your human biology also drives your emotions. So they work hand in hand.
Or your emotions are part of your biology. So your thoughts are basically electrical impulses going off in your brain, which is part of your biology. And your emotions are sensations that are going through your nerve endings in your body. So you can't divorce the brain from the body, or your mind or your emotions from the body. It's all part of our biology.
Yes, it's absolutely. Yeah. Your triune peak. Sorry, I keep loving that. I keep saying that. Shanti, thank you so much again. We've gone into deeper detail with addiction and also brain spotting, so the neuroscience of brain spotting. And I know you've been helping people for years, and I know you've got 1,000,000,000 stories of progress and success. So maybe in the future we can do another podcast so we can go into that. But thank you for your time today. Everyone, I just want to thank Chantal for being on the Be Thyself podcast and giving us such great information. If you are experiencing these symptoms, or if you are aware of some similar behaviors or patterns, Chantal has her own business called the Chantal Recovery. Is that Chantal?
Oh, so I'm the founder of Chantal Marie Recovery.
Chantal Marie.
So you can find me on Instagram, Chantal_addiction specialist.
And she's available online and Skype, so her services are available for you as well.
And if you prefer someone in person in your local town, you can also look up brainspotting.com and go onto their registry and find someone local for you as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone so much. This is the Be Thyself podcast. Again, this is episode 16. And we look forward for our next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Bye-bye.
Bye.